A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome to another session of VOTP. Today we have a very important topic, and inshallah, I see the interest of many parents who are joining in for this session. So let me first give a brief introduction to VOTP. So VOTP stands for Voice of the People, and VOTP was started after October the 7th, when we wanted to do something for the Ummah. And as VOTP, as it says in its title, Voice of the People, we realize it's very, very important for every one of us to understand the importance of our voice and to, first of all, make ourselves accountable, and also held everyone else, including the leadership, accountable for what is going on in the world. So that was kind of the main mission and vision of VOTP. And as a part of that, we have done a series of awareness sessions, and we are going on in this journey. And we have covered a lot of topics, including the current political situation, various topics in political science. And through this journey, we felt that we ourselves are struggling at home, ourselves are struggling with emotional issues, and hence we also launched the platform called Find Your Truth. And this platform helps us to kind of figure out what our real purpose on this planet is, and how we can empower ourselves, fix issues that we have within ourselves, and get to a place where we can raise our voice and demand accountability from both ourselves and the rest of us. One of the important topics which we as parents and as community have been dealing with is combating the LGBT agenda, and to raise awareness on this topic, as well as to get some tools as to what we can do as individuals. We have invited Brother Yusuf Patel. We are very privileged to have Brother Yusuf Patel with us today. He is a founder and managing director of Muslim Family Initiative, a national organization helping Muslim parents challenge the inappropriate teachings in schools, and giving tools to parents to raise children with clarity and with purpose. Alhamdulillah, Brother Yusuf has delivered over 1,300 workshops all across the UK, and is a khatib, is a proud father of 5 children, and also an instructor at Al-Bala Academy. He also writes regularly for Islam 21C. Brother Yusuf, welcome, and please enlighten us on this important topic, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this topic very beneficial for our ummah, inshallah. Bismillah.
Yes, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin, Wassalatu Wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad bin Abdullah, Khatimul Anbiya wal Mursaleen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Firstly, thank you to VOTP for organizing this session. We've been talking for a long time, and alhamdulillah, we've managed to find a date suitable for both of us to arrange this session. So I hope it is beneficial for you. I want to make this session as interactive as possible. Obviously, given the time, we're going to do a limited amount of interactive questions, but I think that's important for the session, but that will not take away from delivering what we need to today. So firstly, I just want to know, just a 1-minute quick activity. Why are you here? So in the chat box, I just want you to tell me what you hope to get out of this session, because I just want to make sure that this session meets your needs, and so that what you want from this session is in line with what I will deliver, inshallah. So please do just very quickly a 1-line sentence in the chat box on what you really want from this session. Like, if there's one thing you want to walk away from this session, one piece of information or one question you want answered, please put that in the chat box. You've got another 40 seconds, and then we'll move on. And if there are no contributions, then I'll know that I can do what I want. No. So what can I do to correct this area of LGBT? Good, yeah. We need strategies to combat LGBT agenda as believers. Yes, good. Find out how to talk to my kids about this awkward topic. Very good, yeah. How to combat indecency around us Muslim. Good. How can I talk to my children about it? How can we discuss the issue with children aged 8 to 10? Okay, good. That's very good. That's a very good set of expectations, and hopefully, inshallah, I will meet those expectations for you. So by the end of the sessions, you as parents, inshallah, you will understand the foundational vulnerabilities, the emotional, social, and ideological vulnerabilities that make children susceptible to LGBTQ narratives. You'll recognize the importance of what we call preemptive parenting, which is including building a strong Islamic identity and emotional resilience to help children resist harmful influences. Because we're going to talk about the difference between preemptive or proactive parenting and crisis parenting, really trying to deal with crises as they happen rather than seeking to deal with them before they happen. And this is something that we want to make a distinction between those two. And then what we want to do also is identify the key messages and assumptions behind common LGBTQ narratives and learn as parents how to challenge them in age-appropriate, principled, and effective ways. And then also gain practical, actionable strategies that go beyond behavior management, focusing on reshaping the child's environment, beliefs, and sense of belonging. I'll talk about a lot of case studies of people I've worked with, and that'll bring to life some of the things I talked about. But I'm really interested in really not theory. I'm not interested in a theoretical model of parenting, but I'm more interested in something very practical, something that you can take away, something that you can apply today. And I want, as a result of this, I want parents to feel empowered to take meaningful steps at home and in wider community efforts to protect and nurture their children's fitrah, their natural disposition in a world which is hypersexualized, where there's so much emphasis on sexual aspects that go beyond that goes against the trajectory of human history. And it's only the last 60 or 70 years that this is the case. Before that, there wasn't such a heavy emphasis or thinking around sexual matters being almost the key to everything. Unfortunately, that's how it is today. So look, so I will start off with a bit of a scenario. Yeah, your friend comes to you and is in desperate need of advice from you. They say to you, "My 14-year-old child says they are gay. What questions do you ask? What advice, if any, do you give?" This is the last main activity I want to do. This will set the scene for some of the things that we're going to discuss after this. But I want you just to put down maybe some advice you'd give to somebody in this situation. And then after this, we will talk about some strategies that we can employ to help become more proactive in these scenarios. So in this situation, your friend comes to you, asks you what that my 14-year-old child identifies as gay. Are there any questions you'd ask or any advice, if any, you would give? So maybe you can pick one of those that you feel is important and answer those. I'll just basically give you another 30 seconds and then we'll move on. And maybe this question is quite a complex one. So I understand why there's a hesitation in responding. So yeah, what is your relationship like with your child? It's an excellent, very, very good question. That is a fantastic question. Are you known about his company? Yeah, what are they friends like? Absolutely, these are very fantastic questions. Very good. Have you noticed any recent changes in behavior? Very, very good. Excellent. Why did they make this choice? Okay, good, good. I think that I'm really impressed by those type of questions. I think those questions are really good because usually I get questions which are very like surface level, but these questions are much deeper. How free are you in talking to them? Okay, good. Yeah, absolutely. Very good. So here, look, as I mentioned in the beginning, there's often two responses that parents take in relation to all of these issues. There's either responding at the point of crisis, which is the crisis model of parenting, and then there's the responding proactively and preemptively, which is much more about how do we respond to things before they happen, yeah, and how do we try and put building blocks in place to prevent things from happening. And so I'm more interested in number one. I'm more interested in number two, sorry, in proactively and preemptively looking at solutions. This is what I'm going to talk about today. Because look, our children, we need to acknowledge, first of all, and I think a lot of parents, maybe not the parents who are on this call today, but lots of parents are in denial about how much and how far the influences that surround our child are influencing them, are affecting them. And I think this doesn't matter which part of the world you live in, because about maybe 20 or 30 years ago, there were some corners of the world where influences had there were different level of influences on children. But with the internet and globalization, the world has become much smaller, and so the influence that a child comes across in London would be similar to the influence a child come across in Karachi, Islamabad, in Lahore, in Istanbul, in Amman, in Jordan, in Damascus, in Syria, because the internet enables our children to access TikTok, social media applications, to have access to people who they consider to be their virtual friends, who will tell them lots of different things about what morality is, what good and bad is. They'll come across LGBTQ narratives and messages. They'll watch films on TV where the characters are deeply embedded in activities around sexually immoral activities, and also LGBTQ characters who will try to normalize ideas around same-sex relationships to your children. They will read books that also do the same. They will come across ideas maybe in schools, if they go to certain schools. That I know people in international schools across the world, and some of the influences in Western education also impact our education systems in different parts of the Muslim world. So I think one thing we've got to start off with was this idea that there are many inroads in terms of influences in our children's minds that are coming from a whole host of different avenues. And I think we should see all of these influences of different kinds. And I think, first of all, we should be alive to this idea that they are being influenced. And I think the point being is, either we influence our children and the environment in which we create around our children influences them, or society and all of the tools that society has to offer will influence and shape our children. So we're looking at this proactive response that we're talking about, yeah? And there's three things I want to touch upon today that are really important in developing strong children who are able to withstand the messages of either LGBTQ messages or just the general sexual messaging that surrounds them. One is foundational strength, which I'm going to explain in just a minute. And then there's something called emotional security that we need to develop in our children. And then the third thing is worldview clarity, and that spells out the acronym FEW as an easy way of remembering these three things. Now, I'm going to break down all three of these elements because, one thing is that sometimes when I speak to parents, they're looking for very shortcut responses and saying, what can I do today? Like, can I do one quick thing that will shield my child from the impact of these messages? And I say to them, look, as if anything that is valuable and important in life, it doesn't have a one quick fix solution. Yeah, like if we're talking about a whole host of different problems in the world, whether you talk about the occupation in Palestine or Gaza, or West Bank, you can't just click your fingers and solve that in one go. There are many different things that you can do to contribute to that problem. Similarly, in this circumstance around parenting and shielding our children from the vulnerabilities that are likely to be created as a result of the vulnerabilities in our children. It's not an easy solution. I'm not saying that it's very complex, but all I'm saying is that you just need to understand a few things and take a few appropriate measures. So when we talk about a foundational strength, we want to turn foundational weakness into foundational strength. What does this really mean? Yeah. And it means that, when I speak to lots of children and I ask them, look, why are you Muslim? A lot of the times the answers that they give suggest to me that they are Muslim predominantly because they live within a family that identifies as Muslim and lives as Muslims. Their parents are Muslims, and the children are Muslim. And it's almost like a cultural inheritance, an inheritance that is cultural, that is almost as if that they are saying that just as though we may be from Pakistan or India or any other country in the world, and that's our ethnic heritage. Similarly, our ethnic heritage or cultural heritage is Muslim. And actually, this is really a problem because our children need to view Islam from the point of view of a conviction. Their life as Muslim from the point, like the sister at the beginning was talking about purpose, and purpose is key to a lot of this. Yeah, purpose is at the heart of all of this. When we fundamentally come down to the question, what am I here on this earth for? And if that answer is convincing enough, our children will be convinced. And if it's not, our children will be far from convinced about that answer. You know, all across the world, there is a higher level of decline in religious identification. Yeah, and I'm not saying I'm really saying that this is mainly in the Western world, but also you can see some of these elements impacting the rest of the world because how the West initiates ideas and behaviors and attitudes that infects the rest of the world sooner or later. Yeah, because the influence of the West on the whole world. But you see that when sometimes in some of the Muslim countries, to young Muslims growing up who don't feel that Islam or being Muslim has any relevance to their life, it's very easy for them to be influenced by atheism and the rest of these types of things. And actually, really, the idea is that our truths about our purpose are really at risk of being seen as opinions or cultural positions that my father and mother held, but I don't need to really hold. They're not really realities. They're not truths. And in a world which is post-truth, which is living beyond an idea of a truth that is singular, yeah. Rather, in Western philosophy, that the idea is there are many truths and many paths to different truths. And this is not really what we believe. We believe that if there's one God, there's one God. If there's a message that God has sent to us, then there's a message that God has sent to us. If that message that God has sent to us is true, it's true. And so we need to understand that there are such things as ultimate truths that our children need to understand. Now, there's core truths that our children need to understand because, look, we can say to them that LGBTQ identities are wrong, same-sex relationships are wrong, this is wrong, that is wrong, we can do this, we can't do that. But unless they are convinced of who is telling me that I can't do this, and why should I listen to them? Unless they truly adopt those answers in a way which affects their ability to comprehend that what we're telling them is the truth, not another opinion. So core truths like we were created by a creator, that creator created us, and that creator deserves our worship and obedience above and beyond my friends, the famous character on a TV program that I really like, the character in a book that I read and I want to emulate, better than anybody else, any human being upon this earth. That the revelation has to be from a creator who knows what's best for us, and that nobody else knows what's best for me apart from that creator. And that creator, therefore, has the only ability, has the unique ability that nobody else has to set my life's purpose. That life is a test, and life is a short number of years in which we live. And what we do and not do in this life between the point of being born and dying, that is ultimately what's important, whether that's in accordance with our purpose or not, the reason why we were created, and at every moment after we have reached the age of accountability, we will be accountable, and one day we'll go back and meet our creator and answer for what we did. These sound like simple ideas that our children understand, but I'm saying that they should understand them to a level where they themselves have come to these truths. Not that we have said to them as in a lecture form, you need to believe this, this, and this, and tick them off. But rather, they should come across these, and then off the back of that, they should build their own personal relationship with Allah. There's three things that our children need to really be strong in, other than connecting with God on a level where they see him as a creator and they look at the things around them in the universe, and they can connect that to the fact that they were created, and they can be in awe of that creator and then seek to understand what that creator wants from me through the guidance that creator sent to human beings. There are three fundamental ideas, building block ideas that I think they should understand. First of all is shukr. First of all is thankfulness. In the West, there has become a big movement calling for people in response to mental health epidemics to start thinking beyond themselves and people to start thinking about being grateful. Having gratitude journals where they look at things that they're grateful for. So they look beyond themselves. And this is good. This is really good. But often those gratitude journals and those statements around being grateful are only people are grateful to other people.
कि
And
चाचा बैठी थी हो तुम
these these
बैठती
these
कितना
these
प्यारा हो
these ideas of gratitude need to go beyond that. These ideas of gratitude need to go towards, I am grateful for the things that I have in my life, the roof over my head, the food on my table, the clothes that I'm able to wear, and the security I'm able to enjoy, as well as the thousand other things that I have that I never think about. I'm grateful for all those things to the creator who afforded me security, who gave me food on the table, who gave me clothes on my back, who gives me security on an everyday level. And so that needs to be a shukr, a gratitude to the creator. Secondly, dua. Dua is about asking God for whatever you want, asking Allah for the things we want. And it's a personal relationship. You're not here. We're not talking about dua that you learn, like the duas of the Prophet in Arabic. We're talking about in your language. A child in their own language is asking God, "Give me these things," and in that way, they establish a relationship with God based upon servant and creator, and this is a really important building block in building an authentic, organic relationship with God beyond us as their parents. And the third thing is Tawbah. Each one of us, each one of us know what our responsibilities are, but we often fall short. None of us are free of sin. None of us are perfect in any sense. And that's not how Allah created us. Allah created us imperfect. And Allah knew that we were created imperfect. When our children make mistakes, we need to encourage them to make tawbah. Tawbah is a way in which sin is prevented from being normalized in their minds. So when they commit a sin, when we commit a sin, we make tawbah, we ask Allah for forgiveness, and we vow not to do that again. And also we recognize that action as being a sin. And this is really important, not only in having that conversation with God and asking for forgiveness when we need it, but also in recognizing when we commit a sin, not just whatever, not the level of that sin, but who we committed it against. Disobeying God in itself is problematic. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, turn to me and I will forgive you. And so we recognize that the mercy of Allah is greater than any punishment, than any anger that Allah has upon us. And our children need to see God and their creator as a God who is merciful and who says to us that the doors of mercy are forever open. These three things are acts that can do every day that build an authentic personal relationship with God. Often children have a surface level relationship with God that doesn't move beyond just my parents are Muslim and therefore this is my cultural inheritance that I am living. So they don't see the Quran as a book of guidance. They don't see God as somebody real. They see God in a very one-dimensional way. So this is taking God to a level of seeing God as someone to personally communicate to in different ways. I want to talk about emotional security. This is the second element. The first foundational weakness creates in our children a weakness that sometimes and a lot of the times means that they cannot appreciate why God is asking them to do some things and not do some things, because they don't see life as the test that was created by the creator for a purpose. And it's not our real life. Our real life is to come. The second aspect is about emotional security. The second aspect is about, some of the major problems whenever children come to me and parents come to me to say, look, my child identifies as gay, my daughter wants to be a boy, when they exhibit these emotional insecurities, it's often as a result of a feeling of a child that they don't feel loved in the home. Yeah, because love and emotional security are basic needs of everybody, including children. When a child feels emotionally secure and loved in the home, they become resilient, they become strengthened, and they do not fall for the the vulnerabilities or the messaging from either the LGBT community or people pushing them towards a pathway to immorality, because they are strengthened. They believe and they know that they have emotional strength. When children have a lack of love in the household, they will seek to fill the gap of that emotional insecurity in ways that are problematic, whether it be in sexual relationships or whether it be in other types of addictive behavior. One of the key problems that I'm finding amongst children who have who identify as being part of, who have confusion around whether they fit into the LGBTQ community, is often because of a weak father-child relationship. And that's a major risk factor. One of the questions I asked at the beginning was, what is one of the questions you would ask? And I think somebody nearly got that answer very correct in that first instance. She talked about, what is your relationship like with your child? And I would say at the heart of a lot of problems is that I always ask the question, what is the father's relationship like with the child? And this is fundamentally a cause of significant weakness in children. When their relationship with their father is weak, that creates vulnerabilities in children. And that's why this is something we need to talk about. That's why the solution to this is, the solution to this comes from two models. One is the 3 A's, affection, attention, affirmation, which I want to explain in a minute, in the next slide, or the 5 love languages model. Both of these are the same, but both of these are talking about ways in which we can practically, especially fathers, practically show our children that we love them in ways in which they understand love in the language that they understand. It's often, I'll ask in gatherings like this, I'll say to parents, put your hands up if you love your children. And obviously, every parent puts their hand up, because it's beyond a question that deserves answering for majority of parents to say, I don't love my children. We all love our children. But the issue is, how do we show it? And children only understand love in very overt, clear ways that do not require them to interpret those actions. And I'm going to talk about that in the next slide. So, for example, we talk about affection, attention, affirmation, the 3 A's. Affection is hugging a child, smiling at a child, and being warm towards a child. You know, often, especially within the Indian subcontinent, I'm coming from a family where my father, when we grew up, never hugged us. The only time he hugged us was twice a year on the days of Eid. And those were just the rituals of Eid. After the Eid prayer, after Eid namaz, we would come home and we would hug our father. But that was just a ritual of Eid, and it was very uncomfortable. But the issue is that children need to know that they're loved. So affection means to hug, smile, and kiss them and show them that you love them. The Prophet was once sitting opposite a man called Al-Aqra ibn Habis al-Tamimi. So he was another companion. So the Prophet was sitting opposite this man while he kissed his beloved grandson, Hassan radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So he kissed his grandson in front of this man. And the man, he stood up to attention and he said, I've got 10 children. I have 10 children and I never hug or kiss any of them. I never show that warmth and love to them. And the Prophet responded with a statement which showed that he was displeased with that answer, with that boast. He said, look, man la yarham la yurham. Whoever does not show mercy will not be shown mercy. Whoever doesn't show a child mercy, your children mercy, will not be shown mercy. So the sunnah, the way in which the Prophet showed love to children, to show us this is how you show love to children, is by kissing and hugging his children. And his children and his grandchildren were under no illusions or under no misapprehension that he loved them. They knew that they were loved. Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha knew she was loved by her father. Hassan and Hussein radiallahu ta'ala anhum were both aware that their grandfather loved them. All of his children knew that. So we say, look, the solution to this isn't a very complex one. If you haven't hugged or smiled at or kissed or your child ever before, as a father, do it. And so this is about fathers. Mothers will do it all the time. We're talking about fathers. And this creates emotional security with your children, as long as we do it as a continuous thing. Attention is the focused listening, the presence, the quality time we spend with our children. The time that we spend, especially one-to-one time with our children, where we give something of value. Look, I know that whenever I ask somebody, how are you? We are almost primed to respond, I'm busy. Because, today, time is the greatest commodity of anybody, more than money. You can have lots of money. There's a lot of people who live on this earth who are very rich, who are billionaires, but they are so busy in accumulating wealth that they're called time poor. They have no time to actually spend that money. They've got no time to enjoy it. Now, similarly, a lot of us are very busy, or we've been told that we are busy. So when we give time to anyone, that shows to the person we're giving that time to, that shows to them that they are valuable. When we give time to our children, and quality time to our children, away from distractions, we're not doing any other work, we're not distracted by our phones, we are sitting with them, eye contact, and we are just talking to them and spending what we call unstructured time where there's nothing that we're doing apart from just spending time together, or doing an activity which they want to do, whether it be playing games, whether it be going out on a trip, whether it be whatever, going to the gym together, playing a sports activity together, whatever it is. Attention is a hugely important way of building relationship and showing love. And affirmation is the third one. It's about praise and encouragement. It's about showing a child through the language we use to acknowledge and respond to things that they have done, which are good, which we approve of, saying things to them like, well done, excellent, I'm very pleased with you. Or you struggled with doing that and you achieved what you wanted to achieve, well done. Yeah, I know you're struggling to achieve what you want to do, but keep going, as a form of encouragement, as a form of a language which praises, encourages, and which affirms a child. And so we say that when you hug, smile, or kiss a child, when you give quality time to a child, when you praise and encourage a child, these are ways in which a father can build emotional strength in his children. The other way of looking at it is the 5 languages of love, which is the same thing. The first 3 are the same as affection, affirmation, and attention. So the first one, physical touch, that's affection, hugs, cuddles, kisses, and pats on the back as they get older and they don't want to be hugged, maybe. Yeah. Affirming words is about affirmation, words of affection, endearment, praise, and encouragement. We talked about that as well. Quality time is about attention, as part of the 3 A's. The 2 add-ons in this particular structured way of showing your children you love them, because remember, all of these ways are showing your children you love them in ways they don't have to interpret. So quality time, so gifts, giving gifts which are unexpected to them. These are not high quality, high value gifts or high price gifts. They may be small in value, but it's about what they convey in terms of love. So it may be that you go away on a business trip, you come back and you bring some trinkets back for your child as a way of telling them, look, I was busy, I was involved in work, but I came back and I got you things because I remembered you. And this is really important. Acts of service is the 5th way. It's about doing services for your child that they see as valuable, whether it be fixing their bike, cooking their favorite meal, whether it be redecorating their bedroom, things like that. So when we think about using a mixture of all of these as fathers to convey to our children we love them, we use a mixture of them to show visible, overt ways in which we show our children we love them, in which these ways are not, they don't need to interpret our action. Is this love? Is it not love? When you say to your child, I love you, it's very clear what you mean. When you hug your child, it's very clear what you mean. When you say to your child, look, today I've got 3 hours off, I want to spend my time with you. What do you want to do? Let's do it together. Then you're showing them that you love them. The final thing I want to talk about before you end, so that we can spend time on some of your important questions, is about worldview clarity. And one of the problems in our world is that sometimes different values are disguised as facts. So, for example, the LGBT slogan that is out there in the open is "Love is love." Yeah. So, "Love is love" has become the slogan of the LGBT community. Similarly, is this idea of "we were born this way." This is another slogan of the LGBT community. Now, we need to give our children a confidence to differentiate, to separate between values and facts. The fact that certain values are things which come from which are expressions which come from how you view life. If you view life as a way in which you can fulfill all your desires, and you're just there to gain pleasure after pleasure, and that's your objective in life, then ultimately how you live life will be reflected in that. If you believe that life is about you being created by a creator for a particular purpose, one day you will die and you will have to account for everything you did. Yeah, good and bad, everything you did will be accountable. Then your values will differ. So we need our children to understand sometimes people speak about values in a way which confuse values and facts, which disguise facts as values, or values as facts. So sometimes they may say everybody should have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, but that comes from a particular way of viewing life. That doesn't come from our way of viewing life. And so they need to be able to differentiate between the two. Our children are also taught that certain ways of living are universal facts. So the LGBT community are very good at saying to young people, especially, that look, we just want to live our life how we want to live our life. We just want to live our life free of oppression. We just want to live our life as in terms of who we are. We don't want to be living our life by betraying who we are. And so they see that this is a universal fact. But the whole LGBTQ phenomenon is something rooted in a white Western mindset. Is rooted in a Western history. It's not. This is not. These sets of values do not come from Africa or Asia or South America. They are rooted in a Europe which rejected religion, rejected Christianity, and when they rejected that guidance, they moved away from that guidance, and then they made their mind. They made their minds the arbiter, the judge for what is good and bad, what is acceptable and unacceptable, to such an extent that only 200 years ago in England, in this country that I'm in 200 years ago in England, you could be executed for being for identifying as gay, for a man and a man engaging in a sexual activity. They were executing people like that, and it's only 200 years ago in this country that they changed that, and that they said that anybody who acts like this, they will be imprisoned for life. And then 50 years ago, they started to change that and made it legal in this country, to such an extent that over the last 60 years, there's been an acceleration of different laws that went from criminalization of this identity to celebration of this identity. But what we just say is that we need to start to address some of these narratives. Yeah. And the first question I would ask, you don't need to answer, but I would say, what does Islam say about homosexuality? And when I ask this question to lots of people, they'll say to me, it's haram, it's not acceptable. But I'll say to you, look, the issue is that the problem with this question is that sometimes when you're asked a question, you don't necessarily need to answer that question. Sometimes you should question the basis of that question instead. Is this question appropriate? Is this question acceptable? Because first of all, what is homosexuality? Homosexuality isn't a behavior. If we understand it as a behavior, then this is wrong. The West understand homosexuality as an identity, a part and parcel of who some people are. It's like we have two arms and two legs and two ears and a nose and a mouth. These are physical parts of our bodies. Similarly, they understand that the sexuality, who somebody is attracted to, is not a behavior, is not a choice. It is something that is hardwired in your body, something that you can't change. And we would argue that is absolutely false, because there is no scientific basis upon which the existence of a sexuality or attraction to males exists. But what we can say is that from a universal fact, from nation to nation, people to people, tribe to tribe, throughout human history, a boy becomes a man, a girl becomes a woman. They are attracted to each other. They marry, and from that basis, a family is established, and society is built upon that cornerstone. This was how societies functioned since the time of Adam alayhi salam until now, until at least 70 years ago. And now in the West, they have moved away from family. They've moved away from marriage between a man and a woman. They've rejected these norms, and they've accepted liberalism and an idea that human beings should define for themselves what makes them happy, and that good and bad should not be defined by God and God's guidance, but by human beings. So ultimately, we say, look, when we need to understand that homosexuality doesn't exist in the way we understand it to exist. It's not. It's a phenomenon. It's not a behavior. We say same-sex sexual behavior is haram, absolutely, but we say that this idea of homosexuality doesn't really exist in the way that we understand it. Western secular liberal worldview normalizes sexual morality as a personal choice because that's what it's founded upon. When you remove yourself from the guidance of God, what's left is for you to define what is good and bad. And that's the problem. There's no evidence of any genetic predisposition to same-sex attraction. There's nothing which proves that it's normal for a man to be attracted to a man or a woman to be attracted to a woman. There's nothing that exists that proves that to be the case. We know that from the story of Lut alayhi salam. We know that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us there was the people. This is the first time in any society at the time of Lut alayhi salam. At the time, so this was Lut lived at the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam, and this was the first time from Adam to Ibrahim to Lut. No man approached man for sexual relationships before that time, and at the time of Lut, this activity started for the first time. We know that it's not something that has existed throughout all of human history. It's something that existed from the time of Lut alayhi salam until this day. We believe that attraction is socially influenced. It's controllable behavior, not identity. And I'm going to explain some of this in the examples I'm going to give in the next few slides. We live in a world in which we are told, and our children are told, desires, you should just give in to your desires. Yeah. Whatever your desire is, you desire some food, give in to that desire. You desire to sleep with somebody, you should give in to that desire. We don't believe that human beings are animals. We believe that we have a higher purpose. We believe that we were created for that higher purpose. We believe that as Muslims who believe in this higher purpose, that desires should be fought and desires can be controlled, and that desires either emanate from shaitan, from the one who is accursed, who wants us to be astray, or from something that pushes us from internally to want to do an action which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is displeased with. We also need to teach our children that feelings are temporary. There's some children in the West especially who are young, who easily become influenced by an idea that they're born in the wrong body, for example. There's girls who believe there should be boys. There's boys who believe they should be girls because they were born in the wrong body. But we should teach our children, just as we teach our children, that every action, every behavior that you do, even if you make a mistake in your behavior, you can change that and you can always make up for it. There's nothing you can do, no behavior you can do, even a sin in the eyes of Allah that can ever take you outside of the fold of Islam. A sin, if you recognize it to be sin, can always take you back to Allah because you can use tawbah. Here also, feelings are temporary. Sometimes some children at the age of 12 or 13 say, look, when I grow up, I want to be a firefighter. I want to be a police officer. I want to be this. I want to be that. And then a couple of years later, even a couple of months later, they'll say, no, I don't want to be that anymore. That's the nature of children. Children will come up with ideas about themselves, which they'll change. And we need to recognize that at any point in time, anything that they express about themselves is not the finished product. They're not the finished product. This is not something that is fixed within them. These things can be changed. These things feelings can change. Ideas about what they want to do can change. They are temporary, and they shouldn't define who somebody is. And we talked about the story of Lut alayhi salam. Our children need to know that when it comes to relationships, there are no neutral values. What that means is that they'll see a Western celebrity saying something about relationships. Now, most of the time, these ideas about relationships come from particular values. Yeah, when someone talks about their boyfriend or girlfriend or their sexual lifestyle or the things they like to do or not like to do, these come from how they understand life. Yeah, and all of these Hollywood actors or Bollywood actors and actresses, they have an idea about life which is firmly based upon the material world, that this life is only material. There's nothing spiritual about this life. There's nothing that goes beyond this life apart from feeding their desires. And that goes against our worldview. So our children need to understand that this whole idea about life being materialistic and is not a neutral value. It comes from a very Western idea about life. So firstly, we need to realize that responding to the narrative necessitates us understanding it. Understanding the whole LGBTQ narrative is based on an idea that someone's behavior and attraction is a part and parcel of who they are, that can't change, that is a fixed part of who you are. So if when a boy suddenly sees another boy and has an attraction, he thinks, this is who I am. And the West is very good at labeling. It labels everything. And that label sometimes gives young people an idea of belonging. Sometimes that label gives someone an idea of, oh, I'm different. Oh, that's the label which proves my difference. I'm not I'm a girl who doesn't like pink and doesn't like dolls. I'm a boy who doesn't like blue, who doesn't like football. And therefore, this label fits me and proves to me that I'm not abnormal or I'm not just bad, but this label proves that I'm okay and normal. So we need to understand there's this idea in LGBTQ ideology, which is about fixed identity. But we need to teach our children about changeable behavior. Every behavior is changeable. If sometimes I do an activity with young children where we go through a list of actions and we say, imagine you are someone who is used to waking up late. You always wake up late. Can you change that? And obviously the answer is yes. If there is a reason to change that, you get a job or there's some reason to wake up early, you can wake up early. It may be a struggle at first, but you'll do that. If somebody smokes in their life, they can give up smoking. Even if they've smoked 20 cigarettes a day for 20 years, they can give up smoking. If someone is addicted to drugs, they can get out of that addiction. Addicted to alcohol, they can get out of that. Every behavior is changeable, and every behavior is also rooted in desire. But our purpose in life, it reminds us that desires that are bad, that involve disobedience to God, are not desires that we should chase after. And this idea of every feeling is temporary. So every feeling is temporary. So it's a snapshot of our feelings at any point in time. They do not in any way label or categorize us in a permanent way. And what it is that our purpose grounds us and enables us to understand that some feelings are good and should be followed. Some feelings are bad and should be rejected. I do this activity with young children, yeah, not too young, but usually like 8, 9, 10, 12, because this whole LGBTQ narrative is there. We look at all of these types of labels, these LGBTQ labels, and we say to them, and usually we give them like pieces of paper with the label and the definition. And at the end, I ask them, which one of these are made up? Some of these I've made up myself, and some of these are not. And so I ask them, which one of these are made up? And sometimes some really bright children will say they're all made up. And when I hear that, I think, wow, that's so clever of you, because that's the reality. All of these are made up. This idea of being gay is only something that has existed for about 80, 90 years as an identity. Lesbian, even asexual, this idea of someone being asexual hasn't existed for more than 10 years or 5 years. Every other day, you're adding different labels to the LGBTQ community. Yeah. And there are more labels than there are days in the week and peoples on this earth, because sometimes they will say, you can decide on your own label that meets your needs. The reality is a lot of the labels that people adopt is, there's someone who said, look, when you stop believing in God, you don't stop believing in anything. You believe in everything. Without the guidance, you start to want to fill that void. Yeah, you fill the void that spirituality and the worship of God gave people in the past. You fill that void with all sorts of different addictions, labels, and things. So we should see all of these as almost cries for help. These are ways of people filling the void. I'm going to give you very few. This is a couple of minutes now, yeah? I'm going to talk about a few people that I have helped and supported, yeah? So, for example, Muhammad's father, he sought my help because he's 17-year-old, identified as gay. So Muhammad, he shared that he had experienced these feelings since he was 13. He felt isolated. He had no close Muslim friends. He was always alone. He always felt different from others. He didn't feel like the other children. And he said to me, look, I felt that I was different from the age of of around 13, and I had no one to speak to about this. At college, he met a group of girls who befriended him and encouraged him to adopt this idea that his difference made him special. His difference was gay. Like all of these ideas about him understanding himself to be different was nothing more than him hiding who he really was, that he was gay. So by the time I met Muhammad, he believed this is who he was, and he wanted to live this life. And he also had a very strained and distant relationship with his father, and his relationship with Islam was very ritualistic. But you could see that he was someone who was looking for attention, who was crying, who was wanting help. And so, these are common factors I see in a lot of young people. They feel themselves to be different. They don't have friends. They have a weak connection to their creator, a weak relationship with their fathers. And this is something we see a lot. Jamal, at 18 as well, he said, Jamal, he reached out to me because he was dealing with same-sex attraction. He was a Muslim who wanted to fight this same-sex attraction, but he felt that he had this same-sex attraction. We had lots of conversations, and he said that he had a difficult relationship with his mother, that his mother had treated him badly since he was younger, had always bullied him. He was the only actually son in his household. All of his elder siblings were sisters, and it was quite strange that his mum would. I thought his mum would spoil him because him being the only son, but instead she used to abuse him verbally. She used to she was disappointed with him as a son, and so he developed like a real hatred towards women. And his relationship with his father was very weak because his father was not the dominant figure in the household. His mother was. And so we had a lot of conversations, and when it came out that, look, the main thing was his relationship with his mother, not his father. And he said, look, when his mother was diagnosed with cancer and it was considered to be terminal cancer, she started to have a new way of treating him. She started to treat him differently. She started to say, sorry, I'm sorry I treated you badly all your life. I really love you. And then he said, look, I walked out on the street, and the first thing I felt was an attraction to women for the first time in my life. Yeah. And so you could see that there was a connection between his view of his mother and how he generalized that to views of all women, and how that developed into a hatred of women and a love for men. And he said that after a few months and treatment that his mother had, she no longer had a terminal cancer, and therefore she went back to abusing him, to verbally abusing him. And he said almost as if from before he had this attraction to women, that ended straight away, and he developed his hatred towards women again. Now he's going through counseling, support to overcome this. But one of the ways in which he needs to do is go through counseling and establish some support to try and work through these issues that he has. So I'll go through one last one. Yeah, actually, I'll go through this very quickly. So Aisha's mother called me and said, "Look, my daughter wants to be a boy." We said, "Okay." I said to her, "Look, there's going to be some underlying issues there. This is not the actual issue that she's facing in her life. This is something that is that is hiding something deeper rooted within her. But you need to find out what that is by showing her lots of love and support and speaking to her and finding out what that is." A few weeks later, she called me and she said that her daughter was confided in her what her real problem was. She was the only daughter in her household. All her elder brothers were obviously brothers, males, and every time they finished their food dishes, they didn't have to take their dish to the sink, let alone wash it. Every time they finished with their clothes, they'd throw it on the floor of the bedrooms. She'd have to walk around the house, take the clothes, wash them, iron them. So she felt that the whole weight of the responsibility for doing these things was on her, and she felt that to be unfair. So she felt in her own mind, if I was a boy, I wouldn't have to do that. And so this was a cry for help. Once her mother realized this and changed the rules in the household and made the brothers do the work as well as her, she said, "Look, I didn't really want to be a boy. I was just really angry at the injustice." A lot of the times, when girl wants to be a boy, a lot of the times this is as a result of dissatisfaction, either not being able to live up to the standards that society places upon women, or it's because of some issue that she's had, either a distant relationship with her father or hatred towards men and things like that. The last one I want to go through is Bilal, and we'll end it here. So Bilal's father called me to say he had discovered that his 17-year-old son had had a sexual relationship with an older man who had met online. After he was groomed online by this man. The man ordered an Uber for him, which picked him up, and they proceeded to have a sexual relationship at that man's house. We talked about their relationship, the father with his son, and he agreed that they didn't have a very good relationship. He had a stronger relationship with his mother than with his father. So I advised him to invest in that relationship, to show him love. And even though he may, sometimes you don't like your children because of what they do, but there's a difference between liking your children and loving your children. You always have to love your children, whether you like what they do or not. Yeah. And so I said to him, look, find a mutual activity you can both do together to build your relationship and to build your to show him that you love him. And they did. They developed. They went to the gym together. They did some activities together, and slowly, but surely, their relationship was rebuilt off the back of that. Um, but these are some of the examples I've come across. Finally, just say, look, we're creating lots of resources for parents over the next year. Similarly, like for example, toolkits for parents. Maybe when we do the next toolkits, we'll come and speak about some of those, about purpose, about child abuse, about pornography, about social media, all of these types of issues that are affecting children in some way or another that parents need to be aware of and take action against. And also, we're creating like a madrasa maktab curriculum also to support children. But really, I want to spend some time on questions, and I hope that this session has been beneficial for you. Jazakum khair.
Jazakallah khairan, Brother Yusuf, for this giving a lot of clarity, on what the underlying issues are, and giving us the terminology and the wordings as well as how we can, inshallah, communicate with them. Yes, so please, the audience, I would request you to, you can raise your hand, and inshallah, we will take questions, or you can also type it in the chat, and we can read them out as well.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Brother Aga. Yes. Go ahead. Yes.
Actually, my question is related to when we speak to children, there is one fundamental question that must be addressed. Like, what is the purpose of all existence as human, and more broadly, the purpose of all creation and everything that exists? Like, I
Yeah.
ask this question not from the place of doubting the existence of Creator. So, like, answer it. After you answer my question, I will share more context to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked about in the first part that purpose is the heart of everything. Yeah. If a child does not know their purpose, they'll be open to lots of different ideas and values about how to live life that go against our fundamental value system. Purpose, if you believe that your purpose in life is to understand and worship God and live the life that He has set out, because He knows what's best for us, and that one day we'll meet that Creator and account for how we live life, then the way we live our life and maneuver through life and navigate life will be fundamentally different from the person who believes that this life is about just attaining as much sensual pleasure as possible, to attain a happiness that each one of us just defines for ourselves, and that moral good things that which are morally good or bad are things that are changing and are not fixed. Because when God and the one who created us is away from defining what is good and bad, human beings are the ones who define good and bad, then fundamentally there's going to be changes in what you understand as good and bad over time. When God becomes the one who sets what is good and bad, that will be very fixed. And this is what we call objective morality, a morality away from our own personal biases. And so sometimes we may struggle to wake up for Fajr in the morning because it's cold or because we're sleepy, but we wake up because we realize our purpose is more than just to sleep. Our purpose is a more noble purpose, and our children therefore need to understand their purpose. This is what I was trying to get to grips with in the first part of our session today.
So thank you, sir. Like, there's more context to my question. Like, there's a hadith in which the Prophet said, I'm not sure of its authenticity, but there's a hadith. Allah says, I was a hidden treasure and I will to be recognized, so I created the creation. This refers to a broad purpose of creation. And there's also another concept that Allah made man as his Khalifa on Al-Ard. So my question is, how do we verify this purpose and how this is connected to what we have discussed earlier? If we are unaware of like true purpose, it becomes more difficult to find our identity and do what is right.
Yeah, so I'll talk about this from a perspective of a parent to a child, because I think this is our context today. It's a very good question, and it's a very broad question, but I'll try and limit it to how we as parents can ensure that purpose is at the heart of our children's thinking. Purpose is built on an idea um, that why am I here? Like, if you find yourself one day drugged and placed in the room, and you wake up and you see that room is unfamiliar. You start to ask yourself questions like, look, I wasn't in this room when I went to sleep, and now I'm in this room. How did I get here? Yeah. Who put me here? And how am I going to get out of this room? What am I going to do to get out of this room, to get back home? Fundamentally, human beings, there are some questions that have been that have been placed in us as a part of our fitrah, a part of our natural disposition, that human beings today are so busy with other things in their life that they forget about. And look, when we walk out on the streets of our children and they see the trees and the leaves, and they see the beauty of creation, and they see the different animals that Allah has created, they see how complex human beings are in terms of the organs in our body, and how every aspect of our human body works together to keep us alive. Whenever you focus on any aspect of creation and study it and understand it, and connect our children to those signs of creation, those signs of creation lead us to the creator. They're like the breadcrumbs that lead us to the creator. When we say things are created, there's a creator who created those things. Now, who is that creator? Now, we don't know anything more than that. We're looking for now a book of guidance. We're looking for some guidance from the creator to know, who is this God? How do we worship him? How do we live our life? What is the implications of understanding this God and living our life in accordance with that God commanded us? So then you have to then ascertain the authenticity of religious texts like the Quran. And the Quran is definitely authenticated through the challenge that Allah gave human beings to bring the like of it, and human beings weren't ever able to meet it. All the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told human beings about in the Quran that the Prophet would never been able to know in his lifetime, some embryology or things or predictions that came true. So obviously this is a very detailed topic, but in terms of purpose, is about connecting our children to God and connecting our children to the book of guidance in a way which is independent of us. So they come to those conclusions, recognizing that God created them for a purpose, and that he sent the messenger, Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, with the final guidance to guide us in how we live our lives. So fundamentally, they've got to understand these things from a point of view of their own conviction, not as a transference of what we believe to them.
Jazakallah khair, brother. We have Sister Amir who has posted this question in the chat. You said that the relationship with father plays an important role. What about single mother's child? I mean, does it have to be the father or any male figure?
Yeah, very good question. Now, so here, this is a really good point, that children, there's something to children, a man and a woman bring different aspects. Allah subhanahu has created women and men with different strengths and weaknesses. And it's almost as if it's like Allah created we fit in together as two that bring like different aspects to a child. A woman brings like a huge amount of empathy, care, brings security to a child. There's a mother is different to a father. A father will throw the child up in the air, and the mother will say, "Don't do that." But this helps a child in different ways. But so it's like a father will play rough with a child. A mother will not do that. That's not what a mother does. But what we're saying here is that we're not trying to stigmatize a situation where a mother is raising a child on their own. But what we say is that, look, a child needs a male role model in some respect. So I would say, look, if a mother, if there's people from the extended family, like an uncle or somebody, a grandfather, they can bring like a fatherly perspective to that child, or a male role model perspective to that child. And in the past, in our Muslim communities, there was this idea that raising a child is not just an individual pursuit. It's like an extended family pursuit. Everybody helps each other in raising their children. You create an environment where there's an intergenerational environment where the mother the father, the grandchildren all live together, and there's shared experiences and intergenerational learning and wisdom that comes from that. So what I'm saying is that if you're in that situation, or if somebody's in that situation, they need to seek good role models for their children, good male role models for their children in order to fill that gap. And it is definitely possible, and it's really something that we need to ensure children have, inshallah.
Jazakallah khairan. Yes, before we move on to the next question, the audience, please go ahead and fill in the feedback form, which is in the chat. Please do that. That helps us to bring us more important sessions and important topics which are beneficial to you, inshallah. We do have a question from Sister Shama. Does all the root cause of this issue, do they start from home? And secondly, does a father has a more important role in training than a mother?
Yeah. So I'm a big believer in not reducing things to is the mother or father better. Yeah. The fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the mother and the father, the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you look in Surah Luqman, yeah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about, he says something really, he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I've been reading Surah Luqman and looking at the tafsir of Surah Luqman, and I've fallen in love with this surah of the Quran because its meaning is so huge and magnificent. Allah says in the Quran, ووصينا الإنسان بوالديه حملته أمه وحنا لا وحن وفصاله في عامين أن اشكر لي ولوالديك وإلي المصير. Allah subhanahu says, look, Allah has enjoined good conduct with the parents, yeah, and then He says that then Allah first talks about the parents, and then He spends the rest of the ayah speaking about the mother. He says that the mother carried the child with difficulty upon difficulty, and then weaned that child, breastfed that child for 2 years. And then Allah says, and be thankful to me, anishkurli, and to your parents, and to me is your return. And so Allah doesn't say even about the mother that after it's as though those 2 years are all that the mother does for a child, and actually it's not. The mother carries a child, then feeds a child, protects that child, spends countless hours of sleepless nights, and then every night after that, including until she dies, she is concerned about her child, and that's a situation forever. But Allah is almost saying that those 2 years, if you have to be thankful to your parents or your mother especially, but just those 2 years, that's enough for you to think about. Don't even worry about every other time she spent with raising you, but just those 2 years. Look at all the difficulty she went through. So I'm a big believer in saying, in not saying that who is better, the father or mother. Allah says, the Prophet said that if you were to eat, you will never be able to repay your father. Even if you found your father enslaved and you paid the ransom to free your father, you still not be able to repay your father. Yeah, and that's a big thing. Finding your father as a slave and then repaying him and giving him his freedom, that seems like a big thing. I mean, one scholar then said about the mother, he saw this man carrying his mother on Hajj, yeah, a long time ago. He saw his mother carrying he saw the son carrying his mother for the Hajj and doing the tawaf around the Kaaba. And he said, this is really good what you've done, but you haven't repaid her for one labor pain that she went through in giving birth to you. So what we're saying here is that both the mother and the father bring different things to a child. Neither one is better than the other. Because the reason why is because Allah did not prefer the mother of the father or the father of the mother, but said they have different responsibilities, different strengths, and each one of them brings different things to the child. But what I would say is that in our day and age, where sometimes fathers are emotionally disconnected from the children, we need to stop that. We need to start thinking about fathers being more involved in their children's lives in order to create a situation where the vulnerabilities we know that can happen as a result of a distant father, either absent or emotionally absent, is problematic. And so we need to plug that gap.
So we have another question from Sister Joyce. She said, what would you advise a recent revert who has an 11-year-old girl who is non-binary? Up until now, she has taken a typical liberal Western approach, and now she finds herself confused.
Do you know what I'd say is, and may Allah subhanahu help you with this child. Yeah, really. First of all, make immense dua for her guidance. But one thing you can do is 11-year-old child is still a child. 11-year-old child is not the finished product. An 11-year-old child still has many years to develop. That child has a number of years for her brain still to develop, for her body to develop, for her hormones to balance out. Yeah, there's so many things she's going through at the moment and so much confusion, and so sometimes it may sound like a strange piece of advice, but what she needs at the moment is your love. Yeah, she needs your love more than anything else. She needs you to be there for her, to love her, and not don't fixate on the things she wants you to fixate on. Sometimes the more attention you spend on this idea of her saying she's non-binary, the more you crystallize that or ingrain that idea with her. So, for example, look, if imagine I said to you, yeah, I want you not to think about the color red. And I say, remember, don't think about the color red. Yeah, I remember, what is the color? I don't want you to think about red. The more I say to you not to think about that color, the more you'll think about that color. This is the reality of human beings. The more you talk to her about, you're not non-binary. No, this is not you. You are just confused. The more sometimes you will create a situation where you will encourage that rebelliousness. Because children have a degree of, all of our children, when they're going through teenagers, have a degree of rebelliousness. Yeah. So what I'd say to you is, just don't discuss that with her at the moment. Inshallah, she will move out from that. She will grow out from that. At the moment, her understanding herself to be non-binary has no impact on her life. It's not leading to anything. So just leave it. Just love her, spend time with her, make sure she has security in the family home, and make immense dua for her that she leaves this confusion, and she has some level of security in what she believes as she grows up. Inshallah, she will change, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guide her through your dua, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help you and your family, inshallah.
Ameen. Jazakallah khair, brother. If anyone else has any questions, please go ahead and you can raise your hand and unmute yourself, or you can also type it in the chat. So in the meantime, I have a question for you, Brother Yusuf. So I know in the schools here in the US, we have books, library books and school books, which are starting with a man and a man can be parents, and
Yes.
That in mom and a mom can be parents, so that kind of stuff. So how, at what age should we introduce these concepts, to a child, or is there any other strategy we should be employing?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things I should do there. Yeah, like in the US, in some states in the US, parents have challenged the inclusion of these books in the school curriculum and in libraries. Sometimes, like in Maryland, they're taking it to court, and they've had success in the courts against these things. They've challenged it at the school board level. So whatever you can do to challenge these things in school is hugely important. But what I'd say to your second part, which is really important, is that, I was speaking to a group of parents yesterday and saying to them, look, sometimes some of the discussions that we want to have with our child, we want to delay until they're teenagers, until they're adults. But we don't have that luxury because our children are being exposed to ideas much sooner than we would like. And so what I'd say is that we need to ensure that our children, that we start to engage in discussions with our children as almost as an organic way. Now, the way I say it is that there's some things that are going to happen to them that we need to talk to them about before they happen. So before our children go through puberty, they need to know it's happening. It's something that we need to discuss with them. Puberty is a hugely positive part of their lives, even though there's some negative aspects that they may conceive to be negative. So, for girls going through menstruation, that can be daunting. For boys going through changes that they can't explain can also be very frightening. And so they need to know what changes will happen, and that these changes are changing them from boys and girls to men and women. And that is a huge change in their life, but it's a positive change. There are some things we need to, there's some things we need to do with our children in terms of what we call teachable moments. Things that we see around us that we know that they have come across. We can't hide away from them. They see a man and a woman, or a man and a man kissing in the street. We know they've seen that. Identify that. Say, oh, you saw that, didn't you? Let's talk about how you feel about that. Why do we not accept this as being acceptable? How do we address this? So just start a natural conversation. They see something on TV, they hear something on the radio, whatever. Use that as a means of building and reinforcing our values with them, and just having that conversation. Sometimes when we have conversations with our children, we normalize them coming to us with their concerns. And when we hide away from them. They think there's certain things I could talk to my father about. I could talk to them about fractions and about different mathematical equations, and I could talk to them about geography and history, but I can't talk to them about this. So we need to normalize certain conversations so that they come to us. And we need to always say to them, look, whenever you've got any questions about anything, come to me and we can discuss them. So within the family, the mother or the father, one of them needs to be open for them to come to discuss these matters. So I'd say there is no really starting age at which to discuss some of these things, but a lot of it is down to how much they're exposed to at what age. If they go to schools, public schools in America or state schools in the UK or wherever, you need to start discussing these things much sooner because they're going to be exposed to them much sooner. Social media it opens up the world to so many different behaviors and ideas. Their friends who they are connecting with and who they're consorting with, they may also be influencing them in different ways. So we've got to normalize conversations about a whole host of different things that we may find squeamish or we may find uncomfortable to speak about because unfortunately our children are being exposed to this, and therefore we need to address these matters with them.
Yeah, with audience, if you have any questions, please go ahead and raise your hands, or you can type it in the chat as well. Yes, and one other question which comes to me is, I mean, if you have our kids making friends with one of who has this kind of a predisposition, so what would you say to them? Should you ask them not to be friends with them anymore, or especially the elder kids, or should you ask them to, how would you deal with that? It becomes difficult.
Yeah. So what I'd say to you, look, is the way that the way we should teach our children is that they should treat everybody as human beings. Right. Yeah, beyond these labels. Yeah, and so every child, some children, these children who identify as gay or lesbian, they're not bad people. They're just confused. It could be that they become Muslim in the future. Yeah, and the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will come to them. But what we should do is treat them well, but they shouldn't be treated well because of the labels. They should be treated well in spite of the labels, because human beings should be treated as human beings. But what we should do with our children is to ensure that they have a clear idea in their minds about the qualities they're looking for in friends. Yeah, because friends are hugely important. Friends can take you down lots of different paths. Their influence is greater than probably anything else. A friend can make you steal. A friend can make you take drugs. Peer pressure is real. We see the consequences of peer pressure every day. So it's really important that we empower our children to make decisions about their friends that are in line with the values that they want to achieve in life and in terms of their purpose. And so having a friend who believes in these ideas about sexuality being such an important part and characteristic of their lives, or that people can change from boys to girls and girls to boys, is not something that is really in line with their purpose and our values. And so instead of just saying to them, I don't want you to have them as your friends, you can do that, but the more smarter way of doing it is to help them to understand what values they're looking for in friends and what friends are going to serve them in fulfilling their purpose, and then just find those types of friends first of all.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair for very precious advice for all the parents out here. So, inshallah. So I think, if we have no other questions.
Brother Yusuf, I have a question. We say that in the West, all this topic is there, but it also exists in Pakistan. It does exist, but it's never spoken about in the home. There's a lot of homosexuality in Pakistan, and I just want you to guide us on this area because of this hidden aspect.
Yes.
The consequences are huge in that culture. If you could,
yes.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. It is absolutely correct. I speak to friends in Pakistan and they tell me about this happening and about NGOs working in Pakistan and promoting these things. And it's the fact that the entertainment industry, ideas and films and things are available means that some of these, a lot of these aberrant values have become normalized through the films and through the books and through lots of different characters on Netflix series and things. And so absolutely, it's the case that a lot of the things that a lot of the ills that we see in the West are also impacting the Muslim world. We're not immune from that. So I would say really that there needs to be concerted efforts for Muslims in those countries to recognize those dangers and to start building confidence in Islam as it's from a conviction basis in children, so they understand what is right and wrong, not because their parents tell them to do that, but because they know that this is from their creator, and they need to build strong family, because family is the key to a lot of things. So someone was asking in the chat about, is family the start and end of a lot of this? I think it is. Family is when I speak to lots of non-Muslims, they are they are in awe of the Muslim community, even in the West, because of the fact that we still hold on to ideas around family, ideas that have become so eroded within Western society, that family now has very little meaning in a lot of sectors in our country, unfortunately. And so we've got to recognize the importance of family, recognize, sometimes the West has positioned itself as being the arbiter or being the bastion of everything that is good. This is civilization. I remember my 7-year-old child asked me the other day, "What is civilization?" I've heard this word, and I found it very difficult to explain to a 7-year-old what civilization is, because you can understand civilization in different contexts, but there's a Western understanding that the West is civilized and the rest of the world is uncivilized, and we are trying to civilize the West. It's almost this white man's burden, this idea that Kipling came out with, that Rudyard Kipling, that almost the white man, his responsibility, his moral imperative is to civilize the West. But I like to think of Mahatma Gandhi, when he came to the West, he was asked, "What do you think about Western civilization?" And he answered, "It would be a good thing." And so this idea of civilization, the idea of the West being the home of everything civilized, is something that unfortunately is affecting lots of young people in the Muslim countries, and they aspire to be more like the West. So the capitalism, the brand names, the living of a particular life, but this life is illusory, because if you look at in the West, the dissatisfaction for the life that people live is huge. The amount of mental health crises in the West is huge. The amount of depression, especially from these influencers in the West. A lot of these influencers in the West who try to portray a life of happiness and of perfection. And in fact, a lot of them later on will say, "I was so depressed, I had dissatisfaction." A lot of non-Muslims are becoming Muslim in the West, and they will tell you, when I speak to them, they will say, "Look, the reason when I was a non-Muslim, I had no stability in my life. I had no security in my life. I was just going from one addiction to another, but that didn't give me any happiness or satisfaction. And now with Islam, I've got a sense of tranquility and happiness that I never ever experienced before." And so, whilst some in the Muslim countries are trying to imitate the West, a lot of people in the West are trying to move away from that, because they can see they live that life every day and they're not happy with that. So maybe we need to give examples of how people in the West are moving away from that life, to wake people up, to say, actually, why are you aspiring to be like this when people here are aspiring to move away from that?
True.
That there's a question.
Yes. Yeah, okay. I think we'll just take one last question, inshallah, and then we will. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Vedant.
Since homosexuality exists in Pakistan, like to a significant extent, I have also come across something in Tafsir ibn Kasir. It mentions that during his time around 700 Hijri, some scholars, businessmen, and fuqaha, and even government authorities were involved in such acts. And Ibn Kasir advised people to keep their children away from them. What are your thoughts on this? Like, doesn't such a statement raise questions about the credibility of scholars of that time?
No, the reality is that the fact that somebody does something which is wrong doesn't make that thing wrong, whether they wear the label of Islam or not. That's the reality. there's no one, no matter how pious or no matter how much of a topi he wears or a beard, dari he has, or anything like that, that makes them immune from disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when they disobey Allah, we don't follow them in their disobedience and say that's acceptable. What we say is that they've fallen and they've made a mistake, and we ignore them in that and go to the Creator who told us what is good and bad. The reality is that there's nothing that like there may be a big religious figure, there may be a big like some sort of celebrity sheikh today who says all sorts of things and millions follow him, and then one day he does something wrong and there's a scandal there. That scandal shouldn't shake our faith in Islam, because our iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not based on that person. Yeah, it's based on something more important than that person, the Creator who created that person, us and everybody else. And so I think the reality of human history is that some people, no matter how strong they are or big they are in religion, can fall and can make mistakes and can do wrong things. And that's the reality of human beings. We're not a world of angels, we're a world of human beings. And so we need to go back to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said for us to do as our starting point. And we take guidance from those who are strong. That's why even a lot of the scholars say that, the scholars you should follow most are those who have died and have died upon goodness. Yeah. And don't pay lots of emphasis upon people who are living, who still, their book of deeds hasn't shut yet. Focus on those who have died. And we've got examples of scholars from our history who died upon goodness. And so we follow them.
Yusuf, can I just finish off with one question here?
Yes.
Brother Yusuf, a lot of the parents are new to this area, right? They've never talked about LGBTQ with their parents, with their kids, or in the family, or at the dining table. So could you end off by just giving us, where do we start? What is, how do we begin this? Our own education? What do we do?
So what I'll do, instead of answering that question, because that question is a very excellent question, a very good question, but I don't think I'll be able to do justice in the time. What I would say is maybe we'll come back and I'll do a session based on this particular question, because this is an important question and it's a topic that deserves to be answered. Maybe we can schedule one in within a couple of months, where we talk about how do you discuss sexual relationships and things with your children, what strategies do you use, what are some of the tips that you can utilize and the structures you could utilize to start off these conversations, even if they're uncomfortable. So maybe what we'll do, let's set up a time where we can do a specific session on this, inshallah.
Okay, inshallah, yeah.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Yusuf, for all your time,
No
for educating us parents, and Jazakallah khair for all the audience who have taken time out of their precious schedule for this, involving in this important discussion and learning some tools and important concepts. So inshallah, we will try to get you, Dr. Brother Yusuf, back on in a couple of months for topics, inshallah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, inshallah, with that we'll close. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. جزاك الله خيرا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله. جزاك الله خير.